In this video, we're going to give you 5 tips to climb in Season 4. With it finally here, let's give you everything you need to set yourself apart from the rest and quickly climb the ranked ladder. But do me a solid and smash that like, subscribe like it's your favorite body pillow, and let's jump into it. Now, the first thing that we need to talk about is the 25% swap. Everyone knows that you can maintain the first 25% of your ultimate when you swap to another character, but they don't really understand just how powerful this is and what this means for you. Specifically, in the first fight of any engagement, you're gonna come out of spawn as whatever character you want to play, and normally you're going to see very quickly whether or not the character is gonna line up the best against the opponents. And oftentimes it's in that gray area where it's passable, but there's a lot of times where there's another character that you could swap to that very clearly counters what the opponents are playing. And after that first fight, let's say it's King's Row attack, being able to swap to something that is more optimized for shutting down whatever the opponents are playing and being able to carry over that first 25% of the ultimate that you gained is actually kind of busted and something that you should be looking to do quite a bit. I think this is incredibly powerful and one of the biggest ways that you can abuse the ultimate swap mechanic. Now moving on to tip number 2, stop chasing meta, chase mastery. And of course, I will be doing a tier list over every single role after we play on the patch for a little while, but it's important to understand that it's more important to work on your development in the characters that you want to get good at rather than focus on what is good in any given meta. Most of the time, meta is based on higher ranks of play or pro play, which is not going to affect the vast majority of ranks. And even more than that, you need to understand that you getting good at any character is going to give you a much better chance of climbing to Grandmaster than abusing what is quote-unquote broken. The more repetitions you get on a specific character, the longer you learn matchups, learn what is good and bad about your character, their strengths and weaknesses, hone your mechanical specialty by doing things like practicing your ultimates or your movements in a custom games environment. I always teach specialization because a repeating of hours on the same role or the same characters is gonna really help you maximize your improvement with these. On top of that, I'm gonna be making a matchup guide for every single role. So if you wanna know exactly what characters your character is good or bad against and how to play certain matchups, smash that like, subscribe, because we're gonna be doing that pretty soon. Now, the next tip that I got for you is a simple one, and it's simply live more. And while this seems like pretty generic advice, it's important to understand that one of the best metrics to actually climb and actually win is just die freaking less. You gotta understand that as long as you're alive, your opportunities are technically infinite. And if you can reduce your deaths, you're going to have many more opportunities to carry, you're going to have more consistent value, and you're going to win more games. And here's some tips to die less. The first thing that you need to understand is that you should be repositioning constantly throughout the fight. The easiest way to do this properly is by accurately understanding the advantage or disadvantage of your team. Maybe you lose a person and you have a numbers disadvantage. You should be giving up space, backing up and going to a more reserved position because you're more vulnerable. And while the enemies might make a mistake into you and you can leverage that to turn it into a parity, it's important that your position reflects the overall team advantage that you have. And conversely to that, if you have an advantage, your position could get more aggressive relative to that advantage. And keep in mind that advantage and disadvantage is not purely numbers, even though that's the biggest one. It could also be ultimates and it could also be abilities. If you have no abilities on Ana, right? Let's say you don't have your sleep, you don't have your nade, your position should be more defensive because if you get dove on, if you get attacked, then you're not going to have your cooldowns to bail you out versus you can be a bit more aggressive in your position when you actually have these cooldowns. So this is going to be a big way that you die less is by accurately understanding what your advantage is, what that spectrum is, and making sure that your position reflects that and you don't just go to one spot, stay there the entire fight, and then eventually die and you feel like there was nothing you could do, but in reality, you should have moved like 20 seconds ago. Now, the next tip that we got for you, and this one's a very, very important tip, and it's stop being married to objectives. So many people hyper prioritize every objective in the game, whether that's an objective point or a cart. It's important to know, while these are ultimately the things that are meant to win you the game, right? Capping an objective, pushing a cart to a checkpoint, only those key moments truly matter. The final tick out of 3 when you're capping an objective, when the cart actually captures the spawn point because it changes where you're going to respawn and it changes your time. Outside of that, what's more important is winning the team fight. And there's several strategies that you could incorporate by leaving the card or leaving the objective to get more team fight wins overall. The first one is snowballing, where you're going to leave and push up past the objective, sometimes even leaving everyone off the objective to push up on the enemy, getting snowballs and forcing them to all reset and regroup with their team. Not only is this going to give you a free fight win because they have to all regroup before they can fight you, but your entire team is going to get free ultimate from the matter, which is really, really strong. And it's something that a lot of players just won't do. Although in ranked, make sure that you at least go with someone else or a couple other people and evaluate advantage versus disadvantage in your small group of people pushing in. The idea is to stagger separate people trying to run away. You don't want to push in by yourself trying to stagger only to run into 3 people and die. Another strategy that's super important is the idea that you should be leaving the objective as you get closer to capping certain key points. As an example, an Ana player will be on the objective pushing it for most of the time or a lot of the time in a traditional composition. However, as that gets closer to the objective and as the team fight becomes closer and closer to a reality where the opponents are pushing in, the Ana wants to distance herself. She wants to use her range and be in a place where she's not going to get dumped on by utility. If you're on that cart when it's about to cap and the team fight happens, you're going to get dumped on by every single ability and ultimate that the enemy has, and you're probably going to die. So you would much rather play at a more effective range, have your teammates that can take that space, like tanks, be the ones to push it in the last couple of meters, and create a protective layer of range between you and the enemy team. Last up, we do got to talk about the idea of giving up ticks. This is especially true for you tank players where you lose a certain amount of people. Instead of forcing the fighting on point and fighting like a 3v5, the idea is that you delay as long as possible, give up space, back up, position very reservedly so that you give your teammates time to regroup and that you only contest at the very end tick, because the difference between them getting to 99% of that point and capturing the whole point is just a huge difference. Such a phenomenal difference and so important that it makes much more sense to give yourself a better chance of winning the fight by giving up the majority of that point and allowing your team to regroup. And you get to set the terms of that. You get to call the shots. So it's really important that you're backing up appropriate to that numbers disadvantage. Now, last up, and the last tip that I have for you, is adaptation around your team composition. Every single character is going to have a base playstyle, and the more you play your character, the better you're going to get at whatever playstyle you like to play, or you're going to get more familiar with it. However, you need to understand that up against certain compositions and with certain compositions, how you should play should dramatically change. Like if you're playing Tracer and you always play this Tracer like you have a Genji and Winston jumping in with you, you're going to play this far too aggressively, where you waste all your cooldowns, you never create space or deny space, and most of the time, you're not going to do enough. You're going to feed and die, and really you're going to get frustrated because you're going to get everyone to 1, but never follow up or do anything. Instead of playing that super hyper aggressive playstyle, and you're with a slower composition like a Sigma and some snipers, you need to be alive and ready for opportunities, and also be generally annoying, forcing the enemy tanks attention onto you and make them turn around and respect you while playing in a safe position. So the idea here is that you're changing up how you're playing relative to what is going to be effective in a comp. And you also need to realize that there are a number of ways that you can be effective and bring value to your team. You need to look through these and decide which one you want to play in every given situation, not default stick to the one play style and it's going to work sometimes and it's not going to work other times. And most of the time, if you're having trouble, it's because you're not altering your play style. You're playing far too aggressive or far too passive relative to what your team can do and relative to what the composition of the opponent is. But if you have any questions about that, definitely let me know down below. I'm going to be including more tips on that specifically in my hero guides. I'm going to be coming out with grouped hero guides talking about matchups and play styles. So definitely look out for those. Make sure you subscribe if you want 5 free wins on the house, and I'll see you next time.